The so-called Million People March broke barriers as Filipinos from various countries also took part in the Pork Barell protest. And we'll talk now to British-born Filipino Mark Wolfis, who joined the rally in London. Mark, good afternoon from Manila, and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Carmina.
So how are you, and how was the experience? You were there in London when you joined the rally, but how did it feel like?
Well, I was at work on Saturday afternoon, and part of what happened was when I received news already that there are going to be protests in Luneta. It made me uneasy. Something must be done as well by Filipinos in the UK. So what I've done is to actually organize a snap picnic, ask my friends to come, and apparently this has went viral within the community here in London. At around midday yesterday, there were about 60 people in front of the embassy, and we were really happy of the response by the call of the Filipino community organizers here in London to participate and be in solidarity with our countrymen in Luneta yesterday.
Well, the call of Filipinos, wherever they may be, now really is it should not be business as usual anymore. But for you, what was the trigger? What made you all of a sudden take part in the protest?
I think what triggered my curiosity on the PDAF was the gravity of the situation. Before, we're used to knowing that there is corruption by a certain amount, but not on the same level of money that we're talking with the Napolis case. You're looking at, in terms of British Filipinos, we converted that to $500 million, and that is a lot of money. For the first time, I think Filipinos have now realized how big the gravity of the problem with taxpayers' money being taken out from the people's treasury. And, you know, I may be a British Filipino, but when I go to the Philippines, I pay my taxes as well. The VAT is a tax. You know, tourism, you know, we pay for leisure tax when we stay in hotels. So the fact that, you know, that tax that we pay when we're home is also being, you know, used to line politicians' pockets is unacceptable, and will not tolerate that.
Now, a lot of suggestions now as to how to remedy the problem. But for you, what do you think should be the catalyst for change here? What should government do at this point to take us out of the rut that we're in?
Well, I think we just need to look from the British model. I mean, the budget of the parliamentary system here in the UK is that, you know, funds are channeled through ministries. In our case, that would be departments, and the politician's role is just to be the elected body that approves projects, but that is already just for a signatory type of role, because it's already been, you know, addressed, and it's been consultations have already been done. The elected official's duty is just pretty much to sign it as a last, you know, as a last approval. But the project will go on because there'll still be another channel if that elected official does not approve. So I think that what has happened with the pork barrel system is that a lot of the power is given to the politician. Much more so, I think we must try and have a system where it's already the department's priorities. It's their, you know, it's their objectives that is at the core of the use of funds, rather than what the politician wants to do.
Do you think that communities should also have a say as to where the money should go and what projects their community would eventually need? Because in most cases, as you said, the idea and even the implementation comes from the politicians, and you know, as it turns out, it's not relevant to the lives of the people within the communities.
Well, what I've seen from the news just last night is, I think that because there are no consultations happening in these barangays, in these cities, in these towns, almost all of the transactions are made on a high level, whether it's at Congress or on a city level. That's why these constituents have no idea that funds have already been given to them. And that is quite opposite to what's happening here in the UK, where a project will only start once there is public consultation that occurred. And that would mean that all of those constituents that, are the target of that project will be the first one to know. And once that's already been approved, that's the only time it will go high up in the scale of, of bureaucracy. And that is the thing that's missing from our system. And that's why, as we've learned now, it looks like this has been occurring for a lot of years. And to be honest, yesterday, everyone in that group at the Philippine Embassy in London were disgusted that it has went on for this long, and that it has gone to this type of, level of funds being, channeled out of the Treasury. It's quite appalling.
And another thing that people are talking about these days is that it may be alleged that Janet Lim Napoles was who's a businesswoman and the center of this controversy now. It may be alleged that she was really the mastermind of this scam, but people are now wondering how many more of her kind really went through the system in the past several decades. Do you think of that as well?
Well, pretty much the bottom line of what we found out about Napoles is that Napoles is the third party. Napoles was the service center to convert taxpayers' money into private people's accounts or politicians. Who knows what she would have done channeling it out of the country. But as I said, when we heard of the 10 billion peso scam, the first thing we thought was, who are the politicians involved in this issue? And it was found out that there are several politicians that were included. I mean, just from the conversations I've been having yesterday at the Philippine Embassy, what was the reasonable expectation of British Filipinos from the President's message on Friday was at least there was an intent to at least freeze the assets of these politicians for the time being whilst investigations are going on. If they're found out to be, not guilty, then that is the case. But if they're found guilty, that money should go back to the Treasury and they should be penalized for what they've done. That is the reasonable expectation of the British Filipinos. And that's why we still went on to the embassy yesterday, because the President's message, was lacking of that particular expectation. We did get the message that he would abolish the PDAF, but the alternative to that was still a form of pork barrel. So I think, and that goes for the same people that went to Luneta yesterday.
So in essence, he didn't really abolish the PDAF. It's just they are called by another name. At this point in time, Mark, what do you think? What are you expecting from the President? Do you think that he can still do something at this point?
Well, from the conversations yesterday, I think at the moment the priority of British Filipinos is that the 10 billion peso scam will be investigated, for those people that are allegedly involved in it to be penalized for what they've done, and any money that was taken should go back to the Treasury for that case. I mean, and whilst that's going on, maybe the President, or the government could start consultations on what is the best form of way to spread taxpayers' money into public investment. And that could only be done through consultations of, multiple sectors. And because it is a process, we can't have a new system in a few days. So I think if consultations are now taking place, then at least we're one step forward.
All right, Mark Wolfitz joining us via Skype from London. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, Camila.